and I'm going to mute myself. And so, yeah, I'll call him. So go ahead and keep talking. And if you might read the chat, there might be some questions. I know Angela has put something in about earrings, about gold, or what kind of earrings are the best ones to use.
Well, this was kind of when we found out about the earrings in our clinical for fibrocystic breast, that we wanted to gather these earrings, and we had a company ready to test them, but the clinicians told us that was not in the clinical. So that's another clinical that it's going to have to be taken up. But we can tell, as we know with thermography, if you wear your earrings and you have some tea or something citric, some sort of acidic drink, and have a shot, have the thermographer shoot it on both sides of the head and pick up the subclavian area, we can possibly detect the inflammation, and so you will know them. We're a little worried that because of the heavy metals, especially aluminum, we had a friend that he cleared his physical, but we knew his habit was a bottle of wine every night. He took 2 aspirins every night, extra strength, and he held a cell phone, one of the old cell phones, up to his head all day long. And he ended up with a glioblastoma. And we know also on Wall Street, these guys having these phones up to their head all day, they were very young guys ending up with glioblastomas. And we believe that the aluminum salts that are storing in the brain are collecting and clustering. And this is one way, it's like a magnet, and it's actually be able to collect other metals. Because when you have aluminum salts circulating, especially in the brain, because it goes through so many salts in circulation, that this is an area that is highly suspect that can just develop one very quickly.
Probably the safest right there.
Yeah, the safest would be gold earrings that we see, that we believe, but it's the loop-de-loops, the earrings. And I had one young lady who had her grandmother's silver earrings, and she would never take them off since a teenager, and she had a mouthful of dental work, and she had headaches, and she had thyroid problems, and her face was all broken out. And it was so sad to tell her that that might possibly be a source that she had to address. And she said she had never taken them off in 17 years or something like that. So,
and I think it's a good idea to always take off your jewelry at night, because you do need to give your body a rest. It's better not to have metal interfering with any of the meridians, signaling throughout the system. So it's probably it gives your body a rest, and certainly night times when we need that rest.
Yeah, and this is from the Environmental Science of Europe, and we did also one from Canada about aluminum in wet foods. And it's we have this research, if you contact us, that we are always make it available to not only researchers but to people, because there's such a plethora of aluminum research, and we like people to know where the area. So if you're eating bread and you're eating a lot of pizzas and your breakfast cereals, you're getting a lot of aluminum in, unless they're done organically. And that's the difference between organic and non-organic. Nobody's looking at the aluminum in these non-organic foods. So we caution people that, yeah, you think you're eating right, but organic is that next step that we need to take. And I think once we, we don't have a Geiger counter, we don't have a calorie counter for heavy metals in the food, but once we do, once we're able to get the governments to tell us that how much is in this candy bar, how much lead, how much cadmium, how much aluminum is in the making of this chocolate, that we'll get a better sense of what we're putting into our bodies. Right now, people are worried about, lead in their water. Well, in Flint, Michigan, that they found that, they've got lead in their water, but in Warren, New Jersey, they found out these 100-year-old school that the lead pipes, where those kids were getting more lead in them, and nobody talked about Warren, New Jersey, about the kids and how much lead, or that the teachers who spent all their time at these schools, how much lead was in their bodies. But the oligoscan would do that instantly. We actually offered that, and never heard from anybody. We'd like to also mention that we don't use any parabens in our products. We use what's called Herbalix, and this is where I want to thank Judith Pillsbury, a mentor, and that taught me how to make the Herbalix. It's a combination of 60 sea-based and land-based herbs that are made in its production. And what it does, it uses the good bacteria to keep a product alive, and it kills off the bad bacteria. So if you're familiar with these soaps, these antibacterial soaps that people have been using, it's not widely known, but it kills all the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. So these doctors that have been using these for years, like Dr. Mullane, his hands were just riddled and just, breaking out all the time, and he kept using these cosmetics that didn't make didn't help. But we traced it down to the triglycerides and the parabens and all these other chemicals, synthetic chemicals, and the phthalates that are now getting into the water, and now they're getting into the fish, and so the recycling is pretty bad. And so we also want to mention that if here in Washington we have a lot of septic fields, and that a lot of the folks in here are retired, and they have their kids living with them and grandkids, and they're drinking the water. What happens is that the septic fields here and the water is below here, and the septic fields are seeping. These medications are not breaking down, and so the kids are picking up on their the hormones. They're picking up on all these medications that don't break down, and so we caution people that this is something that the water supplies have to be dealt with. We have to start looking at it starts at home, and we have to really investigate. So yeah, I wanted to show, and I have actually here the Herbalix preservative and the 99.99 of all these things, the challenge test on, you have Candida, you have E. coli, you have all the staph, that the Herbalix did 99.99 on these 5 bacteria, which allows us to be able to talk about as a preservative. It's the first of its kind that we know, and we're very pleased with this. There's a lot of things that we like to talk about, and the anxiety of going in to get the mammograms or everything, and now that you have the availability of purging the breast and cleaning it out, we have a lot of women that make phone calls to us and say they didn't find anything. And we like hearing that. And I think if more women were able to know and understand and practice be able to purge the breast of the calcium and the salts, that the false positives that the doctors want to perform of removing a lymph node, what I call the plumbing of the lymph nodes. There's usually about 15 lymph nodes, and they'll pull one out to see if there's any cancer, or where, because they'll put the dye in. And what's interesting is that, you know, the cancers are all going through there all the time. It's just that it may be earrings or some inflammation that can be resolved and fleshed out. And here you go, if you have a lymph node removed or several of them, then how do we work with your plumbing? Then, in a lot of women, that we actually have to use their skin in the breast area after they've been, you know, a mastectomy, and use that as the way to pump out. I actually have one doctor who had her underarms lasered to get rid of the hair, and we actually, she calcifies under her the sides of the breast, because there's no way to get it out. So we actually have to use her skin to decalcify, and we actually have her use some heat, and so we're experimenting with different ways to accelerate that and be able to do that. I also wanted to mention that when we scan with the Oligoscan for heavy metals, that we use the non-dominant hand because more metals are showing up on that side. If you compare the hands in with spectrophotometry, there's about a 7 to 12% difference because you're burning more metals.
Same with the breast.
And the same thing with the breast. So we know that if you got problems in the left breast and we're seeing heavy metals on that non-dominant side, let's work on that side. But we do symmetrically. We want to drain everything symmetrically. I think that also that the detox can be used, a deodorant, and the belly cream for people with early dementia and Alzheimer's. We'd like to get the metals out of that liver. We also like to transition the detox deodorant. As I mentioned, we'd like to go as we did, and I'll just use this diagram, that as we go from the underarm to the subclavian area, it can actually be used up the side of the neck, the cervical area, behind the ear, and open that lymph node. If that's sore or hard on anybody today, that just means that lymph node's not working that well. Or if you have associated with headaches, that usually means that lymph nodes here are not draining. And we see that actually in thermography. And I actually, I'm not going to show that particular one, but we have seen that in thermography that there is a lot of drainage. I have to tell you, the list of aluminum is so long. This is just a partial page of aluminum and what it's used for. And I'll just read off a couple of them. You know, as we said, antiperspirant, food caking. You know, they're used in food. Flour tortillas, they use alum to keep the flour together. It's used for cakes to keep the dough together. It's used in bread. It's used in so many different things. So you can see why when it's in the body, it's holding, it's clustering, and it's causing the calcification.
And here's your potassium alum right here on this list.
Yeah.
This is from the Aluminum Association.
Yeah. So we know from Chris Exley over in Europe that he found more aluminum is being excreted through the skin than in urine. So you know, when you do the urine challenge and they're having you excrete to find out the metals, well, more of it is coming out the skin because it's the largest organ. So why not use the skin as a way of excreting and also putting things back in? So it's a great way to look at things. And as we talked before, here is the rapid canine communication antiperspirants induced DNA damage in canines by this thing. And they compared some old deodorants, and they found the crystal deodorants were worse than the antiperspirants.
Yeah.
We're kind of going through that. When it was interesting that when we talked to back in 2006 with Chris Exley, that they found that the aluminum in cysts in tumors, we asked him who was left and right-handed, and they didn't even know back then that there was a means to why you asked if they're left and right-handed, because now we know where the metals. In fact, I'm going to hold up the chart here, and this is, I know we have this in the back of our literature, but the first side right here I'm going to point out is a placebo of nobody using any antiperspirant, but look at the variations in these folks. And then the second week, each one is a left and right hand, and we can tell who's left and right-handed just from the heavy metals showing up. And the detox put everybody in the safe zone. So what we did symmetrically, we were able to balance out the left and right. And that gave us an indication that what we could do. Now, this is something interesting, because when the clinic did this, and they did with mass spectrometry, what they did was they just added the left and right underarm, and they divided it. And they gave us, and they said, your product doesn't work. And we said, wait a second, you're supposed to do, this is not right. You're supposed to split the left and the right. And they said, well, that's the way we do things. And so we took it to this scientist, dermatologist, Dr. Howard Maybach, and he looked at this and said, how did you guys figure this out? We've been wondering how to get metals down to do this, and what did it? So this is a medical discovery right here. So this is a warning to anybody using antiperspirants or crystal deodorants. You're going into the danger zone every day you use it. So anyways, there was a question asked by Angela. Thank you. Yeah, we don't know what's in the metal of piercings. We know that some tattoos are done with different types of metals, but different metals make different colors, like cadmium. And so we know that for investigating cancer, that the tattoos confuse the doctors, because they see the heavy metals all the time, and they're not sure if it's cancer or heavy metals. So, but we know the tumors have heavy metals in them. So you want to keep the heavy metals flushing out of your body all the time. You'll feel different that when you keep detoxing, and we find that detoxing is an every day, every night chore, just to keep our numbers down on the oil skin. And we know we detox all the time. They're coming in so fast, and we think that the aluminum is the aging metal, and nobody even thinks about aluminum. They just United States just like we talked about, they use it for filtering for water filters and everything. So we're just aghast that there's a funny equation by Einstein. He says with energy, kinetic energy is energy is neither created nor destroyed. So for everything, every atom, everything we eat, there's a replication. So that's why when people say that, well, it's okay, it accumulates as we age. Heavy metals will accumulate. That is a fact in life. So the trick is to keep detoxing so you can reduce those levels of metals. Daily and nightly. Our thing is to do nightly. So and I'm going to bring up one other thing is that people say, well, EDTA, and I found out EDTA is aluminum 15. It's used in IVs, intravenously for collecting heavy metals, and it will do that. But it will also redistribute lead and cadmium into soft tissues in humans with a high lead burden. And this is Walter Crennan. So his question is, should DMSA be always used to follow EDTA? Something to think about that, and EDTA does have that it does, intravenously can remove things too fast. So we ask that practitioners think about detoxing the skin and vasodilating all the lymph nodes, making sure the foot, the knee, all the lymph nodes are open before you do your IV. Because as we said, we found many practitioners, and the last 2 conferences, over 50% of the practitioners had stuck lymph node or blocked feet. And these are people that should know. So when I just compressed and showed them the blockage in the fluid building up, and here they're trying to detox, and they say, why do this and that? Well, your lymph nodes block. Nothing can get through there. And so you have all these great things, but now you have a way to get it opened up, and you can continue internally. So external first, then follow internally. It doesn't mean like you can't, and mushrooms, organic mushrooms are a good way to, milk thistles a good way to chelate internally heavy metals. So I just caution people, those are things that you can do every day. In organic cilantro. Cilantro, just regular cilantro, has an affinity to pick up 7 times more aluminum just from the water it's growing in. So so that is something that we like internally. So a lot of people that movement inside the body is not drainage. So the new word is purging and excreting. Those are the new words that we need to get into our detox vocabulary, and that we have to get into our everyday life. So as I said, that we need to get more heat into the body, or we have to create more sweat. And so for our neighbors who have the more, their ancestors were used to eating different foods and they were around more heat, we need to look at this not as a race issue, because race has been used as a political and a market, but we have to use it as a health. So we have to individualize everybody's health to what addresses their way of getting rid of metals. So it changes the paradigm for us. It changes our health paradigm, and it makes us that we have to be intensified. Maybe somebody with a black skin different than somebody with white skin, because they chelate better. And when somebody whose ancestors are binding up and they're giving them medicine based upon the population, we can't do that. So we really have to use, and we use the Oligoscan, and we can start partialing these out. But we know by just palpating the lymph nodes how beneficial that is, and how to teach him how to do it.
We had a couple of questions too. Angela had put in about recapping the easiest way to detox nightly, and also another question was about are these available in Australia? Are your products available around the world, or how can you get those?
Yeah, Australia. Let me say first that it's really a shame that the postal cost and the taxes on these products to Europe and to Australia are very expensive. We do have a distributor in Europe, and they are being used in thermography centers in the UK. But right now it's difficult tax-wise, but we do ship to direct. So I apologize for that. We're trying to break down the government walls on that. But to detox, we first use the detox deodorant on the bottom of the feet. That's first used for, on an average, about 7 nights. And we use it in the underarms and the hands. The reason that we're getting the calluses in the hands and the feet and the underarms, we're getting rid of all residuals. We're softening up the skin so those sweat ducts can dilate. And then what we do, we actually take what we call our belly fat freedom, and we use that in a 1-inch swath, and we connect it to the edge of the bottom of the foot, and we go up both sides up to the knee, and we rub it around the knee, and we stay there every night until that knee lymph nodes open, and also until the definition of the knee is more pronounced, and that we start to see the thigh actually starts to shrink in men and women. And once we know that, and the mobility starts to show up, and that's the nice part. We see the mobility, and people they can bend their knees, they can pick up things much better. And then we have them bringing up the inguinals to the inner thigh, and then they can move that into the crease, the pelvic crease, and they can use it around the pelvic floor, and then they go from the crease to the hip. And then another night they can wrap it around, and these are continuous lines till we get to the base of the sacrum, to the base of the spine, and then we go up the spine and we can touch the occipitals and start draining those. And it's amazing how many people they don't see it, but we know that we start to see the changes. Now that we've got the lower extremities open, we can attach this to the belly and to the liver, the whole above below the ribs, the whole stomach area. We should note that the lymph nodes can have a lot of fungus. The fungus can be from grains and other things. And we found out an old Scottish trick that the Scottish used to take their oats, which was stored in dampness, and they would get moldy and everything. And they used to put seaweed in with their oats when they cooked it. And the iodine from the kelp would kill the fungus. And so what you're getting is a whole lot of kelp and naturally occurring iodine infiltrating. And what it does in the stomach, it's an astringent poultice that will actually pull the body fluids through the visceral fat, and the metals will collect on the outside. And so fat has 10 to 12% water, where muscle has about 75% water. So when you start bringing water into fat, it becomes more of a surfactant, and it can become more mobilized, so the body can use it. On top of that, the serotonin start to change, and the body actually you'll feel this tendency to get hungry because the liver is starting to become engaged. And that's when you start to have the whole change in the body shapes. You start to see it in the neck. You start to see even, areas like the fingers, the rings start to, fall off. And for women, we hear from them that I had this trick question that I said, do you notice a change in how the bra fits? And they go, yeah, it fits differently because there's a lot of, a lot of fat that can build up on the back. And so the bra shape can actually fit better. The bras fit better. And so we know it's reacting with the whole body. And that's what you want, the whole body to become engaged. So the liver plays a big role in obesity and in the fat, the adipose deposit throughout the whole body. So we think that this is a key to even elderly people, that the liver plays a big role. And as I said, that anything connected with the breast, we go right into looking at the liver also. So we're coming from a lot of different areas, and I think Liz.
I'm just going to add something while he takes a breath. The really nice thing about this product is that it has anti-inflammatories. There's about 5 of them in there. It also has castor oil on top of everything that you find in the detox deodorant and a couple of wonderful essential oils. And basically, it's the combination that's working on that visceral fat. It's the ability to draw the blood through the blood flow with the castor oil, which is creating the activity. And of course, we're doing the detoxing at the same time. And we put into this minerals such as selenium and also magnesium. So when you're getting depleted, we're actually giving it to you topically so that you can get it right where you need it, into your cells and into your tissues.
And one other thing we noticed with the oligoscan in most people, we've added the magnesium because a lot of people are low in magnesium. And so we've added magnesium and the castor oil to help in the circulation. I think it's interesting, a lot of people take a lot of things orally, but Dr. Lee Cowden has told, I heard in one of his conferences, that the best way to get magnesium in the body is actually take a mineral bath or a magnesium bath or Epsom salt bath 5 nights a week, and they're able to find that the magnesium level comes up. And if you think about the skin, how important it is for magnesium and what the aluminum's done to the skin, that is an important clue for practitioners listening, that why the skin should be utilized in your practice.
Absolutely. I've heard also, I think Dr. Norm Shealy on one of our events recommended magnesium oil on the skin if you can handle it, as well as a better way to get it in for a lot of people too. I don't know if you've run across that, but that was one of his suggestions on a chronic pain event that we put on a few years ago.
Yeah, magnesium spray is especially good for people with Lyme disease. And a lot of people, if they can't tolerate it, well, you can always get it in here in a lighter form. It's encapsulated and let the body absorb it slowly. Usually, when the body's doing that, the water's pretty good, and you can build up your Epsom salt or your magnesium that way. So you can just keep adding more and more to your bath. Yeah, magnesium, our skins are very short on magnesium. So like I said, we see the people are short on magnesium all the time, and we think it's the aluminum depleting the magnesium all the time.
Yeah.
And what have you seen in terms of some of the kind of common ailments that are going around, like things like chronic fatigue, or ME as the British call it, or things like Lyme disease? Have you seen some direct correlation to the aluminum toxicity in that area?
Yeah, well, Lyme disease, there's a Stanford study that when they studied the Borrelia, they found it likes to hide in the joints. It likes to hide actually in the lymph nodes. And if you think of lymph nodes as your filters, and that's where it's filtering aluminum and everything, it's just creating a lot of debris, like poop, Borrelia poop. And that's what's clogging up the body. And we find that our product is used in the first part of detoxification because it's opening up the skin. And for people with Lyme, that if it's storing in the lymph nodes, you want to get it out of the lymph nodes. You want to keep the circulation, because a lot of Lyme creates a lot of, a lot of pain. And we have found it takes about 1.5 years to lymphatically get somebody ready to lymphatically drain just up to the neck using these products and using saunas and good food and the right supplementation. Our side is only getting rid of the trash. We're the trash people.
Right.
It's not very glamorous. Nobody ever goes through the trash and really investigates. But, you find out where somebody's been by going through the trash. In fact, it's interesting that the CIA now is using, it's investigating with these, the big device companies, how to track people where they've been by just going through your sweat. They can find out what countries you've been traveling in. So there's a lot of data that in just looking at your trash, we can tell where you've been, what you've been doing, and I, like I said, I can tell when somebody doesn't, they favor a shower over a bath. I can tell from their minerals and their heavy metal load. So these things are going to be in the future. And I want to mention one thing to the practitioners out there. With all these devices, you have General Electric, you have Apple making devices, and they're programming them so they can tell you what you need, and they're planning out and cutting out, your practitioner. They want that market, and with all that data, then they can come down and have a solution. But I have to tell you that when it comes to lymph nodes and detoxification, you're going to need a practitioner, and you're going to need the information that we've been talking about here, because there's no machine, there's no device can take care of that. I mean, we're in an area that is going to expand for people, because we know the heavy metals are accumulating in the human beings. I want to mention something that in heavy smokers, we can detect a heavy smoker, and when they detox with our products, they actually can taste, even if they've stopped smoking 5 or 10 years previously, they can taste the taste of nicotine on their tongue. So, I'm hoping within the next 5 years, we'll all be able to have these little gadgets that we can take to the stores and be able to look at our food and see what the heavy metals are, and know that what we're putting in our bodies, or even go to a restaurant and we can zap it and say, no, it's got too many heavy metals in it. Then we can make our own decisions. And that is really up to all of us to make our own decisions on how we handle our healthcare. And that's what we provide in our products, that between your office visits, that you can keep detoxing and you can keep purging your body. And so when you can get back, that you want to see the doctor, you want to see how well you're doing. And so yeah, and somebody just put on the chat, they would like to have one of those machines. Well, let me tell you, there's one of the major grocery stores that your food is being, they're using spectrometry in your food to check pesticides and to check food coming from like Mexico, if it's really organic. And I know it's not being exposed to the general public, it should be. But we do need to have some way to not just count calories, we need to know what's in our food so we can be more discriminative, especially with the autism showing up right now. We need to keep the metals from getting in our kids and those folks that want to be. And so I just want to show you the Sentinel breast cream. That's it right there. And it's just, you don't need much. It's a topical poultice that you put on and, make the ladies happy. We want to keep those body parts on. It's something that we're very proud of. And I'll tell you a quick story. We went to a hospital, and they sent somebody from the breast cancer unit, the top person, and I asked them questions, and I said, you give them the dye to test, for their, and they said, yeah, we give them the dye, and I said, where's it flow, to the axilla? And they said, no, it's kind of funny. It's flowing in to, and I said, well, isn't it supposed to go to the axilla? And she kind of looks at me, and I said, well, do you ever ask them if they use antiperspirants or what type of underarm deodorant? And they go, no. And I said, do you ask them if they're left or right-handed? And they said, yeah, we do. And I'm thinking, well, something finally got through after all bugging all these clinics about the left and right hand. And I said, well, do you ever look at their earrings? And she looked at me and she said, no, why do I look at earrings? And I said, well, this is what earrings do. And she said, how did you do that? And I said, well, we use thermography. And she looked at me, she says, well, we can't have thermography in here, and turned around and walked away.
Ridiculous, yeah.
So, and I mean, I emailed Australia, New Zealand, China, Japan. I have a whole room of clinicals and aluminum research that connects the dots together. So there's a lot of information out there that's not getting out to the public. So why don't we try something new instead of throwing money at a problem that's going where? So I've gone to all the breast cancer groups, and I said, listen, are you looking at aluminum? You're looking at this area? And I'm sorry, nobody's looking in that area. So, and I think Liz should have a word in here.
It's hard to get a word in. I just wanted to say a couple of things about the breast cream. We do have a protocol, and if you do visit that website, www.herbalix, that's spelled HERBALIX.com, you can find it under Dr. Mitra Ray's specials. There is all of these purging products are there. You'll have to drill down a couple of levels because it's kind of hidden, but it's just a simple protocol to explain how to use each of the products, where to apply them, how often to apply them, and also will give you a little diary so you can make some notes about the changes in your body as you start to use these particular products. It's very simple, and it can be adjusted according to your response to using them. It's a basic protocol, but certainly we can individualize it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, all the things that are out there. I know maybe you could touch on. I know we're keeping you a little extra, so I really appreciate it. But if you could touch on maybe some of the other measurement things that are done, like hair analysis or other ways to measure toxicity levels, and what your experience is with those. Have you worked with those as well? And
yeah, I'd be happy to, Mike. I just, Angela came in, and on the website, on our Herbalix website, it's for the lymphatic protocol is under products, and pull down products, and then look under Mitra Ray. Dr.
Mitra Ray specials.
And then open that line up, and then it will bring you into that window. We're a little kind of, we're opening up a new website where we will have for practitioners and explain it in depth. But right now we're very cautious. We want practitioners to be able to work with their patients, and we want the general public to be able to do this correctly. But getting back to hair analysis, hair, Jerry Tennant took hair analysis and sent it to different labs. They all came back differently. And we know that just in hair analysis, you can get behind a bus, it will change. It's not very representative as we feel that a mass spectrometer, because in hair analysis, blood and urine, the standards for how they were set was done by mass spectrometry. The problem is that you couldn't get a room where mass spectrometry was because they were so big and bulky. But now, do you have the spectrophotometry so I can show them what it looks like?
Yes.
And so and see, blood is circulating, and it's really not picking up the heavy metals because it's stored in tissue, and you're looking for intracellular metals. And so, you know, it's something they use for, you know, looking at planets, and they can see the elements by just every element has a spectrum. And then let's go back to urine. In urine, you have to challenge the body. You have to force something out. So, but the metal you might be looking may be pocketing in some area, or because of the lymph node, it blocked. You're not maybe getting something really representative. Not to say it's not bad data. It's just that it's not very.
I'm just going to add something to both the urine and the hair. On the urine, you're looking at it, extracellular, and on the oligoscan, it's intracellular. They're both important data. What you're seeing in the urine is what you're able to excrete. The same with hair. What you see in hair is what you're able to excrete. But if you're not an excreter, you're not going to find it.
And how where we found, and this is why we joined up with a Oligoscan, and here is the device which attaches to a computer. It's just amazing. And they have the databases set up on the internet, and you actually take it and you take the non-dominant hand and you pick 4 points on the palm, and this light within seconds will give you the analysis right on your computer that you can share with your patient or yourself. And you know what's nice, you can do actually comparisons, which we do. We overlap, and we see that the metals are excreting. And this is how we tell if somebody's a non-excreter or an excreter. And that's extremely important because we're finding that over 33% of the population are non-excreters for heavy metals. And you know what I find fascinating is that we would never be able to know this unless we were working with this device. So it wasn't until I started working with the Oligoscan and understanding the sodium potassium channels and added the aluminum to it did I understand the skin, the magnesium, the calcium. Now I can go back and work with autism. I can work with different Lyme disease. I can work with different areas that we never thought was possible before. We can actually now start going into early dementia and Alzheimer's. So this is a different approach that people aren't able to. But I always like to use thermography and the Oligoscan and the human touch, the palpitation, de Gowin's palpitation. Incidentally, they're not teaching palpitation, palpating the body. That's not something that's starting to slip out of the medical schools. And so I'm hoping in the future that the medical schools will pick up on the heavy metals, because that's the new field that we are going to have to address. And that's why the diseases, in fact, in the aluminum thing, there are over 30 diseases in varying degrees that are associated with aluminum. And we have this one, and this is done from Chris Exley. This is not updated for a long time. I mean, you know, people just think of Alzheimer's. They don't realize that, and we found a few more that is associated with, because when you think about, I'll just say PCOS, the thin walls in the vaginal area, and those cysts have aluminum. So, you know, it can be worked with in certain ways. It's a thin wall where the salts, the poisons are trying to get out because the lymphatic trunk is blocked up. So that's why we start at the bottom and work up and open these things. And then once we start detoxing the body and we open it up, that's when the minerals and the supplements need to come in.
Wow.
So, yeah, so we're doing things backwards here for our health, and nobody even knows about it. So we can, we're planning on helping a whole lot of people and address their health that in a way that they're responsible. They make the decisions and with the Oligoscan, they make a decision if they're going to change their lifestyle, if they're going to adjust it, and then come back and see how they're doing. So, you know, we're never out of school when it comes to life, and that's the body we were given, and we have to adjust to it. But we know we can address health issues between the doctor's visits. I think that's very important.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to add something about blood. You had asked about the different types of testing. Blood is really only good for heavy metal testing in an acute state. And that's because it's transporting. What's important to understand is it's going to be delivering it to the cells of the body, and that's where it's stored and making it bioavailable to the person. So whether it's good, if it's minerals, if they're there, and if it's metals, they're there. Good and bad will show up in the tissue.
Yeah, and we know also that that we see in some minerals and supplements, if the wrong things put into it, it'll start to show up on the Oligoscan. So we heard somebody was taking some supplement and they started seeing high nickel in them, and so they went back and they said, do you have nickel in your supplement? Because I'm showing up with nickel in on my metal testing. And sure enough, they didn't realize whatever the way they were processing it, it was picking up the nickel. We found that some zeolites can put out high lead and high aluminum, because zeolite in one form can pick up what it does in the body on a temporary basis. But if it's broken down into a liquid, it can actually break out and put off lead and aluminum in the breaking down of zeolite. That's part of the clustering of zeolite. So people really need to test their products for heavy metals before they put them out. And
the coatings on
and the coatings and medications can have aluminum in their markings, and you know, they can be filler. Oh, titanium is another one. We discovered that a lot of people put titanium in zinc just to lighten it up. But titanium, we now believe titanium's now starting to get into the brain, and nobody's going after that metal. And we also know that the nanos, like if you're doing nano titanium, that might even be worse, because the liver is not able to, it stores, well, let's put it this way. The recent thing off the news is that these cancer treatments for immune therapy are using nano, and they're not reaching their cancer targets because the liver is collecting the nano. So they've got to rethink that, you know, that they're trying something and they have to go right into the tumor if they're going to get to it. But if they miss, it's circulating and getting stuck in the liver. So, you know, we think this detoxing the liver is going to be huge for the nano world. And see, we got into the nano and the FDA was worried about it, but now I'm starting to think that we're going to have to start testing for the nano and where it's coming from. So we know nano can really play havoc with the DNA, and as I said, the nanos are being found in the liver, so they're not targeting they're not getting to the cancer that they wanted to, and so that is behind the scenes scientist stuff that they're trying to deal with, and let's see how they pull the you know, the hood over our faces on that one. So we know, and also we want to talk about the glial lymphatics that were discovered in the brain that most people don't know that that the brain has lymphatic drainage, and we think that it's important to, that's an area of research that we're very interested in entertaining. So we got kicked out of the prostate by the major groups, but nothing's wrong with going to the next one that picks up on this information.
Yeah, well, this has really been wonderful. It's been an encyclopedic discussion, and I do appreciate you hanging in there and taking an extra hour. We had our guest that was traveling today, and I think he just got waylaid, and so this is something that people I'm sure will want to listen to more than once, and it's something I'm definitely going to be talking to you further about. And so we really thank you both for coming on and spending so much time with us and sharing all this great information. And so tell everybody one last time your website, and it'll also be linked on the page that we post this video on after the event.
And I'll let Liz do that.
Okay.
www.herbalix, HERBALIX.com.
Great. So you've been terrific, and again, thanks again for all your extra efforts and all you're doing. And I think you're really onto something for sure. And I'm looking forward to definitely getting more involved in this area, because I know I can use it, and I'm sure all of us can. Really, we just all need to.
Everyone. Yeah. Well, thank you, Mike. We've very much been. We feel privileged to be part of this, and we hope that the audience out there is receptive and can gain something from this and to their health.
And we can send anybody information if they write to us and request it.
Great. All right. Well, thanks again. Herbalix.com, HERBALIX.com. And so again, thanks once again, and we'll look forward to talking with you soon.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.